This is the Environmental Studies Senior Capstone presentation, and I taught the class, but it was largely self-directed. These students did a great job with this presentation. We focused on water in the West as our topic this term, and we read a few texts. The first half of the term that I chose, one was called Cadillac Desert, the American West and Its Disappearing Water by Mark Reisner. We also read The Snake River, Window to the West by Tim Palmer, and he visited campus, of course. And we also read a collection of articles from the High Country News called Water in the West. And in the latter half of the course, throughout the course really, the students also gathered other sources, did research, particularly about Idaho-based issues concerning water. And near the end of the course, they decided to focus their presentation on agriculture, and that ties in nicely with the Year of Idaho Food. The relationship between agriculture and water use here in Idaho.
So, all right, our story of water in the West starts with a man by the name of John Wesley Powell in the year 1869. Imagine a man with a face as rough as the Rockies, a beard hiding scars with stories that are best untold, and only one arm, a result of his time spent fighting for the Union Army and the abolition of slavery in the Civil War. To put it in perspective, this guy made Owyhee ranchers look soft. John Wesley Powell was a soldier, professor of geology, and most importantly for our purposes, an explorer of the American West. Powell predicted correctly that water in the West would be a central issue in its development. He also predicted correctly that there would be squabbles, to put it nicely, over water, and scarcity compared to demand. Things are changing, and the West is starting to realize that water is scarce, and that ecologically sound water management is crucial to maintaining our agricultural industries.
West, water is imported hundreds of miles. The 6-county area of Southern California, including Los Angeles and San Diego, is home to nearly 22 million people, with population growth expected to add 6 million people by 2030. Yet 60% of its overall water supply is imported from distant sources, such as Northern California or the Colorado River. In some areas, only 10% of the water comes from local sources. We have forced green lawns upon an area that is naturally brown. Now, we're facing very thirsty cities because rapid, unsustainable development has conflicted with the reality of water in the West.
Before we look at our study our class did about local farmers and their water practices, I will leave you with 2 statistics about Idaho water usage. 97% of all water used in Idaho is used for irrigation. Currently, Idaho leads the nation in daily water consumption, using 300,000 gallons of water every day.
We conducted interviews with local farmers to find out their farm stories and how they're using water. We asked questions about water problems they've had and how they are addressing them, what kinds of irrigation practices they use, and how big their farm was. These interviews allowed us insight into local agricultural water use, enabling us to get a better idea of what sort of issues the Treasure Valley has in terms of agricultural water use.
The farms that we interviewed basically fell into 3 categories. First, there were some farmers that cared very little about the quantity and quality of their water. This generally stemmed from the fact that they had never had a serious problem with water in the operation of their farm, so they were relatively ambivalent to water issues. The second group was actively concerned with water conservation. They took great strides both personally and financially in attempting to conserve water and to keep it in their streams and rivers through a variety of methods. But the third and largest group was the middle-of-the-road group. This group certainly was aware of water problems, but for a variety of reasons was not actively able to conserve water. This is almost always universally because of financial constraints.
The farmer we spoke to used different irrigation types to accommodate for the different environments he grows in. By altering the type of irrigation, he has been able to drastically reduce the amount of excess runoff and in turn decrease the total amount of water used. Under his watering system, he uses much less than the 5 feet per acre he is allotted every year. This farmer is doing it right. Small-scale, organic farming with water consciousness is a large factor in how he grows his food. He shows us that water conservation does not necessarily require a huge change in the farmer's lifestyle.
In the Pacimero Valley, up near Chalice, there is a rancher. He has 6,500 acres, and then he uses about 80,000 acres of federally and state-owned. For those of you that are not familiar with the Pacimero Valley, it's very dry. It's a high mountain valley. So it's dominated by sagebrush, which that means it doesn't get a lot of water. So how he came up to the Pacimero Valley about 1.5 years ago with the intention of buying a ranch that had been highly degraded. He wanted to have the challenge of doing restoration specifically on rangeland and watershed. Perfect example of someone that cares about the environment and its future, but is also part and cares about the old tradition of agriculture in the West.
It's a consequence of this scarcity that water in Idaho is such a precious resource. And in a free market economy, the consumer really wields a significant power. By understanding where our food comes from and what effect its production has on the landscape, we can really take advantage of the power of consumption to not only shrink our own water footprint, but inform others that they should do the same. So what can you guys do? First off, do some research about the water that is consumed by the food that you eat. Ask your local food providers to carry produce that's grown with sprinkler or drip irrigation. And be conscious of the other aspects of your life too, outside of agriculture that really waste water. For example, watering your lawn, brushing your teeth, really long showers, all those things waste water. So just be conscious of that. So really the story of water in the West has really been about mass modification of the environment, and water has been characterized by this use it or lose it mentality. Since the West was settled and the best dam sites have been used up, the tides have been changing ever so slowly. Producers and consumers alike are growing increasingly aware of the water they're consuming, and more importantly, the water that they're wasting. Simply spreading the word about water consciousness can really have a heavy impact on the choices that people make every day, and thus the amount of water that they use. So if you take nothing else away from this presentation today, at least help us spread the word about being water conscious, as it is a very precious and limited resource in such an arid place.